welcome back to Youth in Podcast, the podcast where we discuss current day politics, policy, and more. I'm your host, Alex Smith, and I'm joined here today by Dr. Matthew Smith, no correlation. Dr. Matthew Smith has a doctorate in school bond referenda and has been an educator for over 25 years. He is well versed in many of the current educational crises and issues facing America today. Thank you, Dr. Smith, for joining us.
Thank you. This is cool. It's good to be here. This is cool. No, this is cool. This is awesome.
Thank you. So we were talking about a little bit earlier and a little bit before we were recording about the student debt crisis and how, it's just hit 1.6 trillion. And there's a lot of talks about how Biden, not if anymore, when he gets into that presidential seat, he'll forgive $10,000 or $50,000. He'll forget this certain percent of money. Can you explain a little bit about what's exactly the inner workings are of the student debt crisis today?
Well, there's so many things that you have to think about when you look at the whole situation that we've kind of got ourselves into. And there's a lot of people that look at it and they say, well, hey, there's a student loan crisis. Let's just forgive the loans and move on. Well, there's so many other things that are to it that go to that. And it's kind of hard. It's kind of like a mosquito in a nudist colony. You don't really know where to begin. It's like, because it's everything attached to it involves so many processes. Now, you hear older people like myself say, gosh, when I went to college, it cost me this much. I mean, everybody knows the tuition has gone up just to so many times greater than the rate of inflation since the mid 80s. Everybody knows that and everybody's aware of that. But when you look at what caused that, it's a lot more intricate. It kind of seems like there's all these different parties and all these different situations that came together to create a perfect storm. So I can start with the financial industry. We can start with the higher ed industry. We can talk about the cultural issue. Where do you think you'd like me to start with that?
I think talking about the financial industry would probably be a good place to start. I think that leads into, it's a good intro just for people who don't exactly know what's going on.
Oh, okay. That sounds good. Well, student loans have been around since there was colleges. And we have to understand too, that colleges were not originally set up to have a career. That's not why colleges were originally set up back hundreds of years ago. Colleges were essentially set up just for personal growth. Like it was just something that you had to do. That was why it was one of those things for people that were either in the clergy or in the aristocracy. But then other things started to happen. Our world obviously got more industrial and it got more technical. Now, who took that on first were high schools. You used to have, every high school had a vocational training program where you would start as a freshman or whatever, and you would take your core classes like English or math or something like that. But then you would also spend half of your day learning a trade. Well, that all started to break down in the mid 80s. And there's all kinds of reasons as to why vocational training ended up going by the wayside. And if there's anything, if there's anything you want me to be specific on, please just say, hey, Dr. Smith, allow me to, because sometimes I have a way of glossing over things a little bit too much. So don't hesitate to interrupt me on anything. But starting kind of in the mid 80s or so, vocational training programs started on the decline. And there are still high schools that have them, but for a long time, you could learn a trade while you were in high school, or you could finish a lot of your apprenticeship hours. Say you want to be an electrician, you could do some apprenticeship hours in that field of study while you were still a high school student. And there are still some high schools that still do those kinds of things, but they're few and far between. And even then, those programs in and of themselves are dying on the vine. And there's all kinds of factors and everything else that has caused that lack of vocational training in high school. But also, right at around the same time, there was a pretty sizable cultural shift. And the cultural shift obviously was that of immigration. And there's a lot of people that viewed college from a different perspective than probably other generations have. you've got a lot of your listeners here. I'm assuming a lot of your listeners are teenagers or in their 20s, and they can kind of relate to what I'm about to say. It's just one of those things that going to college was what you were expected to do. Because in your parents' generation, and a lot of the listeners, your parents or grandparents' generations, there was a lot of times you could go and get a degree, but it didn't matter what the degree was in per se. You couldn't rise up in, say, General Motors in the HR department unless you had that piece of paper, or you couldn't rise up as working in all these different factories. I mean, there's companies where I'm from in Missouri, you really can't go very far through Anheuser-Busch without a college degree, and that's just to work on the floor. It didn't really matter. And even gosh, when I went in the 90s, I had a bunch of fraternity brothers that said their whole lives were planned for them. They'd go and work for Anheuser-Busch, and it didn't matter what degree was in. Well, then you end up with a flood of colleges, and you end up with more students and everything else. And obviously, especially since the early 90s, you've seen a big shift in manufacturing. You've seen a big shift, a big change in our technology from the technological. So as a result of that, the degrees you started to matter. And of course, I'm not saying, I mean, if you want to be an electrical engineer, obviously you're going to need a degree in electrical engineering. But if you wanted to get a degree, say, in an insurance company, it'd be better to have a finance degree, but it wasn't. If you had a degree in general studies, you could still move up in the company. Well, now that everything has gotten so much more technological, that has kind of changed. And the degrees matter. What you get your degree in matters a lot more than what it used to. But that's kind of one of the issues that comes into play when it comes to colleges and what I'm going to refer to as higher education. Well, then there also started to be this big flood of colleges. Colleges expanded enrollment. You saw the expansion of private universities that were going all over the place, particularly in the 90s and the first part of the 2000s. And again, there's more reasons for that. Obviously, our population grew by immigration and all those other things. So you had more students that were available. And here's the big thing that a lot of people don't understand about colleges. Colleges are there to make money. That's the bottom line. That's the bottom line. And if you want to make the argument that they are there for the betterment of the students first, I am going to disagree with you 100%. And I will argue that with you a great deal. And you would think these colleges and universities that put themselves out there to say that they know that they are there to do what's best for the students. Yeah, I mean, I'm not being dismissive of that. I understand that they care. I'm not saying they don't care, but I'm also to suggest that there's no financial motive in any level of university is ridiculous. You look at those universities like Harvard and Yale that have these ungodly huge millions upon hundreds of millions of dollar endowments. Why not decrease your tuition? How about doing that? Well, no, we can't do that. And that leads me to the part of the big issue with that is that we now have so many people with college degrees, they don't mean as much as they used to. I like to tell this story, and I saw a documentary on YouTube on this where a guy had a similar experience. He was talking about this. When I was walking through Westminster University, which is in Fulton, Missouri, I was walking through the campus one time, and I saw this list of students that had graduated with a 4.0. And the university had been established sometime, I think in the 1860s, I'm not exactly sure, but it was an older university. And it showed all these lists of people that had gotten a 4.0 all throughout their bachelor's degree. And every decade, there was maybe 2 or 3 students. There'd be like one in 1950, and then another one in 1955, and then another in 1960. Then in 1990, it shortened. It became, got to be about 1 a year. And the last time I walked through that campus, there was 7 or 8 every year. And that was about 10 years ago. So I don't know what it is now. And I've heard other professors and other people involved in the university process to see. So which is it? Do we have brighter students now? maybe. But probably what is more likely is that the curriculum a lot of times has been watered down. And there's all kinds of reasons why we can explain. We can talk about grade inflation and things like that if you'd like to here in a bit. But when you boil it all down to it, there's more students getting more degrees and more students getting 4.0s. So what effect is that going to have? Which gets to one. So because you have more students attending college and more and more students not getting free education, you then end up with a lot of people with a lot of degrees. And if you don't have something that kind of sets you aside, good luck. You can't get by with the old joke is, lesbian dance theory. That's a running joke. Oh, I got it. Or underwater basket weaving or whatever. Well, those days, it's a running joke, but there's it's more true now than it used to be. If you got a degree in sociology, what are you going to do with that degree? What are you going to do with it? Last I saw, I've never in my life have I been on a job posting and seen sociologists needed. Probably out there. I'm just saying, I don't think I've ever seen a job looking for somebody with an undergraduate degree in sociology. So you've got that issue. You've got a lot more students that are attending university because there's a lack of focus on technical training, vocational training, and there's also you've got a lot more universities. Now, here's a big part of it that really, really got that people don't completely understand. In 1999, the tech stocks were going through the roof. And right around the time, and people debate when it happened, around 2000, 2001, we had a recession because the tech bubble burst right around 2000, 2001. And that was, by a strange coincidence, that's when real estate prices started going through the roof. And we saw all the just crazy real estate prices. And Matt Taibbi wrote an excellent book on this. And if it's worth checking his podcast out when he was on Joe Rogan. And he explains, he says, all these tech people were now looking for some other way to get money. And they saw it through real estate and going to, poor people in poor neighborhoods and getting them to refinance their mortgages and all those other kinds of things. Well, then the real estate market burst in 2008. And that's when it got really bad. Now, here's where the perfect storm kind of came in, is you ended up with a bunch of people that got laid off from their jobs. And typically, since the 80s, we had a pretty nasty recession in the early 80s, but we had two little blurbs on the radar. We had the recession of 1990 and we had the recession of 2000. And really, they didn't last very long. They were short recessions. So everybody had no idea how bad the banks knew. The banks knew how bad the crash was in 2008, but regular Joe Schmoes like me didn't. And so a lot of people said, well, hey, I lost my job. Well, this is fine. I'm going to go back to graduate school. I'll get my master's degree. And then by the time that'll take me 2 years. And by the time I finish my master's degree, A, the economy will get better. And B, I'll be more marketable because I have a master's degree. Well, they finished their master's degrees by 2010, 2011, and the economy didn't get better. The economy wasn't any better. And really, you can make a very good argument that our economy has yet to heal to pre-2008 levels. There's a lot of people that say, oh, the recession technically ended at this time or that time. Well, it wasn't until around 2018 or so that it even got close to anywhere near where it was in 2008. You can use stock market measurements or whatever, but the fact remains the wealth gap had grown and all these other issues had popped up that it didn't really happen. Well, in 2009, 2010, with all these people going to school, universities were raking in big time money because they ended up with all these people, with all these wanting to go to school to improve their financial situation. But see, here was the problem these people had. When they graduated with their degree, or whether it be a whatever degree level it was, they then came out 2 years on the other side. Not only were they still unable to find a job, but they also had $30, $40, $50, $60,000 in student loan debts, and they hadn't worked for 2 years. So it's, I mean, you can't get any worse of a situation than that. And you can take every degree that you want. You can get every degree that you're talking about. To some groups, that doesn't mean nearly as much as actual experience in the profession. So again, you kind of saw that. Well, you saw the financial people looking for new sources of revenue after the economy tanked in 2008, right? They're looking for new sources of revenue. And you got all these people thinking about going back to school, and wouldn't you know it, the entire laws and rules of student loans changed. You were no longer able to declare bankruptcy on student loans, which is what really hurts people. And you can kind of see where maybe that might make a little sense, because what people used to do is, like, people that would get PhDs, or because trust me, earning a doctorate degree is not cheap, or getting a dentistry or an MD or a DO or whatever. And they would sit there and they'd say, well, oh my gosh, I have $200,000 of student loans. I'll just declare bankruptcy. Well, when people started doing that in mass, that's where the problem came in. Now you can kind of see, I mean, I don't personally, and agree, disagree. There's a lot of people that feel one way or the other about it, but there is inherently something wrong. I don't care what level of degree you're talking about. We've made the decision that it is perfectly acceptable that somebody just starting out in a profession can have 2, 3, in some cases as high as $500,000 in student loan debt. You really think they're going to ever be able to pay that back? And banks have to know that there's a lot of people that can't. There's a lot of people with law degrees, and for some reason, a lot of dentists that I've come across that really struggle with student loan debt. So it's not just an issue amongst people with just a bachelor's degree. It's also an issue amongst people on all levels of education. Now, and part of the problem too, universities have to own this. It's not just the financial people. It's just not the cultural shift. And universities have to own part of this, because let's face it, they're selling a dream. I mean, you take a kid who's a good student, who's worked hard in elementary school, junior high, high school. They want some kind of, they're doing it for a reason. And for right or wrong or indifferent, they view the college as their ticket to success, which, statistically speaking, yes. I mean, you are better off supposedly with a bachelor's degree than with an undergraduate. You still have more doors open. Of course, that depends on what your degree is in. But at the same time, there's all kinds of analysis as to whether or not a college degree is worth it. Personally, I think it is. You kind of need to have something, but just make sure it's in something worthwhile. I mean, a degree in philosophy, or a degree in sociology, or a degree in trumpet performance, what is your return going to be on that money? You see philosophy people say, well, okay, you can be a professor at a university. Well, that's swell. But then you're getting, how many philosophy people are out there looking for jobs teaching philosophy in a college, in a university? There's probably quite a few. I notice with my doctorate in education, I quite frequently compete with a lot of other people that want those jobs, because people just, even master's or EDS or doctorate level positions, you got retired teachers, you got teachers that are burned out, that are wanting to do something different. There's a lot of people that want to do that. So it's not as easy, even after earning a doctorate degree, it wasn't as easy earning university work either. But what the universities have done is they know precisely what they're doing. They know that their tuition hikes, they know that their students are going to be paying the price for that, but their perspective is kind of an odd one. And they're tight-lipped about this, but behind closed doors, they joke about what I'm about to say. You'll hear them joke about this, well, I had to have student loans, so why don't they? Well, yeah, that's fine. Okay, that's just a ridiculous perspective, because you would say a better response would be, as from an educator, should be, okay, I ended up with a ton of student loans. I had to work 2 jobs to do it. Let's do what we can to make sure that our students don't have to be in the same situation that I was in, to where I had to put off marriage, and I had to put off family, and I had to put off buying a house to pay off my student loans. The idea of saying I had to have student loans so they should have them too is insane. But that's kind of the mentality of a lot of these college administrators. And college administrators, I'm going to put the fault down on them here. There's two things that I can really say about college administration. Okay. Many universities have a typical university might have, let's say it has a student to teach instructor ratio of say 15-1, meaning for every 15 students, you have one instructor. Okay. Some are more, some are less. That's probably a good number, right? Whether you're talking about undergraduate, master's level, or postgraduate. Well, then, then the typical university now also has an administrator that is about the same number of professors. So you're going to have you'll have 15 students for every one professor, but you're also, that same 15 students are also floating one administrator. So most universities anymore now have a 1-to-1 ratio for every professor that you see there. There's an administrator there. I taught a class once. Well, this is true about all of them. I won't use my own personal experience about this, but think about a class that you take. I live up by San Francisco. So let's take a class, and I'm just going to use round numbers to make it easier. Okay. Let's say you're a college student and you're taking a class at one of the universities, Berkeley, Cal, Sacramento State, Turlock, whatever. Well, let's say that you're paying $3,000 for that class. Say it's just your regular run-of-the-mill English class, basic English 101. And let's say they have 20 students in that class, okay? That means each person is paying $3,000 for that class. So let's do our math. 3,000 times 20, that's $60,000. Now, how much of that is the professor getting? Well, if he's adjunct, he might be getting 4,000, maybe 5,000 for that class. Where does the other 55,000 go?
Right.
To me, that's an incredible question. If one class is bringing the university 60,000, and you're paying the person who's actually teaching the students 5 of that 60,000, where's the other $55,000 go? Well, you can make an argument and say, well, it goes to buildings and grounds. Okay, well, you're going to tell me that that's 100% of that? Baloney. You can't convince me of that. That the rest of it just goes to buildings and grounds and keeping the lights on. That's absolutely insane. So you can't convince me that one bit that that's the case. So that again begs the question. Let's say half of that goes to buildings and grounds. $27,000 for that class goes to maintain that classroom. Okay, well, if it's in one building, let's say they have 3 classes a day in that building, averaging 5 days a week, 15 classes. You do 15 times 60,000. I mean, you're looking at just one classroom supporting $800,000, $900,000. Where does all that money go? Oh, I mean, I don't have the answer to that. But obviously, there's administrators that are making, the guys that I've talked to, men and women that I've talked to, that have gone from teaching positions to administrative positions, say it pays more. They say that it's fewer headaches. They say you don't have to do things like grade essays or grade math tests or do labs or do prep work. It's basically one of those jobs where you get up in the morning, you go to work, you do your job, you go home, and then you may have after activities in the evening or whatever kind of things it has. But an ungodly amount of money, and my never to be too humbled opinion, they're overpaid. Now, if this video ends up on YouTube or something, there's going to be comments in there that are going to be, my Uncle Bob's a college administrator and he deserves every penny he needs. Well, I'm not saying there's not, or every dollar he gets. I'm not saying there's not high quality administrators. There are. That'd be silly to say otherwise. However, to say that a college administrator contributes to a student's academic level of knowledge equal or greater than the professors, because I'm telling you, that example I used before, $55,000, an administrator that you never see, and I get that universities are expensive. I get it. You got all these different people around and all these different people to do all these different things, but that still begs the question, where does all the money go? So you can't really forgive student loans. You can't forgive student loans without reforming higher education. You've got to reform the college system, because if you don't reform the college system, guess what? 10, 15, probably around 20 years or so from now, you're going to see this exact same problem. You're going to see the exact same problem. You're going to see people with an ungodly amount of student loans. And let's be honest, the student loan issue is a drag on the economy. $1.6 trillion drag on the economy. Because you got these people, you take a college student, the average student loan debt is something like $31,000 for an undergraduate. And they have compounding interest, and the interest rates are 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11% in many cases. It takes forever to pay. You got somebody just starting off who's lucky to be making $30,000 to begin with. When I graduated from the University of Missouri in 1996, I had a student loan debt of $13,000. And I went and taught at Lake of the Ozarks. And my first contract, my first year of teaching, was $18,000. And I had $13,000 in student loans. Well, my take-home pay was about $800 a month. My student loan payments were like $400 a month. So I'm spending half of my salary in student loans. Are you flipping kidding me? But again, that was my own choice. I decided to do that. I have no problem, and let me be clear about this, I have no problem paying back a dime of student loans. No problem. I signed up for them. I pay them. I get it. But at the same time, if we do indeed forgive, if we as a society decide to forgive student loans, we also have to reform the higher education system. Because if you don't reform the higher education system, and let's face it, it's corrupt. And I will argue that. And again, this is on YouTube. There's going to be people on there say it's perfectly fine. There's no corruption at all. Yeah, sure there's not. Wink. It's on every level. It's on every level. And that's why it's like, it may not be too bad of an idea for a lot of the younger ones that are listening to this. You basically got choices. We have one thing that we have in the United States of America in most states. I live in California, and our community college system here is pretty darn good. But other states, they have a community college system that's pretty darn bad. Depends on where you go and what states you go to. So you still have to be selective. But choosing a community college close at home, staying home, paying, it's like your choice, you can take an algebra class at a community college and spend, including textbooks and everything, $500. You take that same class at UCLA, it's going to cost you $3,000-$4,000. And you've got dorm fees and all those other things that just add to that. So, and that kind of gets into a lot of parents' egos, because let me ask, this is a rhetorical question. Let me ask you, grand host, how many of your friends ask you this question, or intimate this feeling to you? I'm going to this university because my parents say I should. Do you hear that? Oh, grand host. Why?
Yes. Yes. We definitely hear that.
You do. What are some of the universities that your friends tell you that their parents are pressuring them to go to?
Brown,
Stanford,
I live in California,
UCLA.
so Brown, Stanford, UCLA, a lot of Ivy Leagues, and a lot of high reputation, high costing colleges, definitely.
Well, this is where those younger ones that are fixing to start college, this is kind of the time. The big reason a lot of your parents want to go to these universities is because, yes, they understand the connections. Okay, you go to Stanford, meet other kids that went to Stanford, they can get you better jobs or whatever. That is true. You go to Harvard, it doesn't matter what your degree is at Harvard, and it doesn't matter what your GPA is. You could have a 2.0 GPA from Harvard with a degree in picture framing, but if you just have that degree from Harvard, you've got the connect, you're set for life. That's true. That's absolutely true. It doesn't matter. Same to be said about Yale. And to a lesser extent, you can say that about places like Stanford. But there's so much truth to that. You're always going to find a job. You're always going to find somebody that's going to employ you. You've written your own ticket just by graduating from Harvard. Well, parents, that is where part of the parents' logic. But let's also be honest with ourselves for a second. Another reason your parents are pressuring you to go to a certain college is so they can brag to their friends about it. Seriously. They want to say to their friends, they want to say, oh, look how smart my kid is. And by extension, what a great parent I am because my kid went to Harvard.
Right.
Congratulations.
Definitely.
You just battled your kid with $120,000 of student loan debt. Congratulations. Because that's what I hear. When I hear people, I'm almost 50. So there's a lot of my friends and stuff like that. I see it on Facebook from time to time. Oh, look at my kid. They went to this prestigious college. Okay. That's great. More power to them. If you are willing to say to your kid, okay, yeah, I have no problem with you saddle down with a student loan debt that's going to bog you down for the rest of your life, then you encourage them to go to some obnoxious university that's going to charge them $60,000 a semester. But if you really think about it, there is some merit to, and there's merit to going to UCLA right off the bat and not doing the community college. If that's what you want to do, you do you, man. You do it. But you also need to be very clear about what the repercussions of that might be and is there for, dare I say, I hesitate to say most students, but I can definitely say many students. Because look at it like this too. You might drop out. The average student loan debt right now is $32,000 per borrower. Notice that I said per borrower, not per graduate. So what do you do if you go for 2 years at UCLA, you rack up, say, $20,000 of student loan debt, you decide that you hate college, it's not for you, or you drop out, or you flunk out, your major was too hard, whatever, your parents get sick and you can't go anymore, whatever. So then you have to go back home and you have to get a lower paying job because you've got no skills. So then what do? Well, you get a job at Walmart or whatever, because we don't have factories anymore in this country, really. So what are you going to do? Well, now you get a job that pays you $13 an hour and you've got $40,000 of debt and no degree to show for it. Really? Really? And we got to shake free of this notion. And there's so many people out there that put so much pressure on their kid to go to a college because of their own individual ego. If there's any parents that are watching this or listening to this on podcast, because I guess it's a podcast, but if there's any parents that are listening to this, you think long and hard about what you're doing. Because are you encouraging that kid to go to the college for the right reason? I have one of my kids is a mathematical genius. She's like mind-boggling math genius. Okay. Now, mathematical geniuses, I am not one. And I say that for no other reason than what I'm about to say. Would she get a better degree in mathematics if that's what she chose to pursue at a community college, or would she get a better degree if she went to MIT? Where would that degree, which one of those two places would foster her mathematics if that's what she chooses to pursue a career in? I honestly can't say. But I can say this. I can say, as a parent, I would be very, very proud of her if she got a math degree from MIT, but at the same time, I'd also be proud of her if she went to community college and got a math degree. So any parents need to check this, okay? If you're encouraging your kid to go to a university, you need to pay for it. You can't sit there and say, I want you to go to UCLA and I'm going to pressure you, this 18-year-old kid, I'm going to pressure you to go there. And basically, because what the kid hears is, and some of you kids that are listening to this know what I'm talking about. What you hear is, you, mom and dad, won't accept me unless I go to Stanford. You, mom or dad, won't accept me unless I go to Harvard. That's what the kid hears. You may say that's not true, but that doesn't matter. You may not be saying that, but that's what the kid is hearing. So if you are going to push your kid to go to an expensive Ivy League school, moms and dads, you should be on the hook to help them pay for it. Because to say, okay, go to this expensive university over here, go to Stanford, rack up $100,000 in student loan debt. Oh, and then you're on your own.
Right.
Really?
And we have sources like Avid. Avid is a huge college pro, like setting kids up for college program that's in schools, in middle schools and high schools. And we see articles now being pumped out by even them that says 17-20% of all careers require a college diploma, a college degree. We're seeing this huge decrease in jobs that are beginning to kind of not necessarily require a college degree. And there's still, obviously, that 17-20% is for jobs that are like law enforcement, government, those kinds of jobs, trades, that sort of thing. But even now, we have one side of people who are saying we need reform and we need free college and we need these radical, not necessarily radical, even just changes that need to occur now and they need to occur soon. And that's why they're following people like Biden. And on the other side, we have people who are saying things like, I'm just not going to go to college. I'm going to go to get a trade, or I'm going to follow a career that doesn't necessarily need a degree, or I'm going to go into construction or something like that. So
you brought up a few key points. I'm not sure if you meant to bring them up or not, and I didn't mean to interrupt, but it got to a few key points. Jordan Peterson even says, and this is, kind of a conversation that I say often. And, a lot of times your parents will tell you, they'll say, don't make the same mistakes I made. They'll say that a lot of times. And that's a very natural, normal perspective for all parents to have because they've screwed up more than you have, right? So like when there is a severe shortage, and it's going to get worse, of people that can do advanced skills, that can do the advanced things like pipe fitting or electrician, those jobs that can never be automated or be replaced by technology. I mean, what good, and put it this way, what good does it do if we have 100% of our society college educated, but not a single one of them knows how to hook in a junction box and put a new box in a new electrical meter into somebody's house? How good is that done? And who's to say that somebody would be happier with a degree in sociology? I don't mean to pick, well, actually, yes, I do mean to pick on sociologists because they're fun people. But what good does it do to have 100 people in degrees that don't do anything, that don't have any expertise? If there's two things you should do, should you get a college degree? Yes, of course you should. But should that college degree give you entrance into a career? Of course, yes. But at the same time, you should also know a trade really well. They always say that fallback position. If you're if you want to be an engineer, be an electrician first and then be an electrical engineer. If you want to be a physician, if you want to be a medical doctor, there's nothing wrong with going to a community college first and getting a LVN certificate and then going to college, then going to your 4-year university. There's nothing wrong with that at all. And I'm here to tell you that if you choose to live at home and you tell your parents, I want to go to school and I want to live at home, they're not going to charge you rent or anything. They'll probably pay your tuition. I'm here to tell you that they probably won't. Okay. Because as long as you're like doing something, I mean, if you're, something, but of course I'm not everybody's parents, but at the same time, you can go to college for 2 years and have it cost you less than $10,000. You can go to college and have it cost you $120,000. And if you get that 2-year degree, this is $1,000 a credit hour at big universities. But you also brought up another key point, and I was going to jump on it, and then I forgot what it was. So
it was probably the point. Please, I didn't mean to interrupt you. On free college and free
free college,
which we were going to lead. I was going to lead into the next question of what do you think the effects of free college would be? Obviously, through this podcast episode so far, I think you've made your stance somewhat clear that you don't support free college, you don't support free higher education. What are the cons of free college, and why do you think that it's ultimately a poor choice for America?
That's a great question. And okay, let me say this. We don't want a society full of idiots. We don't want that. We want a well-educated society. We want to be able to have a system that trains our doctors and our lawyers and everything else. We need to have that system. But the idea of free college is wrought with issues. Okay. First of all, the first issue to that is when that happens, when college becomes that way, becomes a free thing, who's to say that college wouldn't be viewed as a right and not a privilege? High school is a right. You have a right to a free and public education until the age of 18. That's a right, as defined by the Supreme Court. Well, the argument for it being a right is because it's paid for by taxpayer dollars in its entirety. Well, yeah, you can say, well, gee, public education, like University of Missouri is paid for by tax. Yeah, they get tax subsidies. Of course they do. But you also have to pay when you go, and whatever money they get from the state does not pay for all the expenses that universities claim that they have. So when college becomes a right, that gets us to another gray area. If you have a right to a college, do you then have a right to a specific college? Well, I pay tax money. I can send my kids to the school where I send my tax monies for my property taxes, right? So that means that I pay my kids can only go to that school where I pay my property taxes. That's pretty much true all over the country. But when I pay my money that goes to, say, UCLA or goes to Cal or goes to Sac State, I'm basically paying my tax dollars, the portion of my tax dollars that go to universities, go to all the universities. So therefore, because I do that, can I send my kids to any public college in the state of California? And if that's the case, we all know that everybody's going to want to send their kids to the best college. And if a college cannot deny a kid enrollment, it also comes down to this. Colleges can expel people. Public high schools used to be expel people. You go to school, say you commit a crime, say you smoke pot in the bathroom, say you vandalize something, whatever. The high school used to be able to expel you and you'd never be able to go back to that school site, right? That doesn't happen anymore. They then send you to an alternative school or something like that. What happens if somebody does something like that in college? Hey, free education, free college, therefore it's a right. Now, in what I know what I'm saying is pure speculation. Maybe that would happen, maybe it wouldn't. So you can say, well, geez, that is ridiculous logic, and you're probably right. I'm just saying one of the concerns that I have with seeing the evolution of that. But it also comes down to this too, and this kind of comes into student loan forgiveness. Okay, student loan forgiveness has a very serious ethical issue that very few people talk about. Obviously, if we forgave all student loans, that'd be $1.6 trillion. And we're asking everybody to pay that. You're basically including people that are on the poor end of the tax brackets. So you're basically asking the poorest among us to subsidize the richest among us. Because obviously, if you go to college, you're going to have more money. You go to college, you get your degree, they say that a college graduate makes $1 million more in the course of their lifetime than a non-college graduate. I've never vetted that numbers, but we do know that a physician, a medical doctor, an ophthalmologist, or a podiatrist is going to make more money than a cashier at Walmart, right? We know that. We know that a heart surgeon is going to make more money, or an attorney is going to make more money than the cashier at Walmart. So why should the cashier at Walmart pay for the attorney's student loans? That's kind of silly. We're basically, and the same people that are advocating student loan forgiveness say trickle down economics is ridiculous, it's unfair, and it doesn't work. Really? then why are you advocating for it? Because trickle-down economics is exactly what student loan forgiveness is. You use the poor people to help out the rich people, and then all their wealth trickles down to the poor people. Student loan forgiveness is trickle-down economics, no matter how. You can't make an argument to say it's any other way. Now, you pull that over into free college. Say, because college is not for everybody. It's not. It's just not. And again, we don't have a problem paying some money to colleges and universities in our tax money. We don't have a problem with that, and we shouldn't. So this is where it gets to another gray area. Should somebody who decides not to go to college or decides that it's not for them or doesn't have the ability to go for whatever reason, whatever, should they subsidize the people that are going to make more money than them? So if you have free college, you're going to have the people that aren't able to go to college paying for the people that do go. So the people that do go that are going to make more money later in life are getting subsidized by the people that make less money. How ridiculous is that? I can't wrap my head around that part. So that whole part of student loan forgiveness and free college has that ethical thing you have to address. You have to address that issue, because if you don't address that issue, how fair is free college? Truly, how fair is free college? And if somebody chooses to go to a trade school and become an electrician versus somebody that decides to go to college and get a degree in general studies, I mean, who's going to make more at the age of 24, 25? Obviously, the electrician is. So why should the electrician pay for somebody to get a degree in sociology? I mean, there's so many ethical issues that need to be addressed that you just can't sweep under the rug.
Right, definitely. That's all the time we have for today. Thank you again, Dr. Smith, for coming on.
This was great.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to continue to support us, you can do so by checking out our Instagram pages at YIP Institute and at Watch Verbum. You can also look at our website at www.yipinstitute.com. Make sure to follow our page as we upload weekly. Have a good day.